Afternoon. It's 1:37, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Ms. Huerta, would you mind calling the roll, please?
President Leah Oliveri.
Present.
Vice President Alan Wilson. Secretary Diana Summers.
Present.
Board members Scott Harris.
Present.
Jesus Jimenez.
Present.
Robert Tamez is absent. And John Balls is absent. We do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask if there's anybody here for public comment, and let me make a note that we, just in case people are listening, because of lack of important things to do today, we did cancel the Type A meeting, so we will not be having a Type A meeting. Would anybody like to make a public comment? Have you received any public comments, Ms. Huerta?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much.
Madam President?
Yeah.
May I request excused absences for the last two meetings?
We're just getting
okay.
down to that.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, I
Okay.
think somewhere in here I have that motion. Do we have to do, yeah, it's item 1. So first, have you had a chance to look at the minutes? Are there any corrections, additions, changes to the minutes that any board member would like to offer?
I move that we approve the minutes for the February 20th meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay. And then and these, by the way, are the minutes of February 20th, 2023 that
Yes,
we
ma'am,
just
that's right.
approved. Sorry, I should have read that. And then are there any members who wish to discuss their absences?
I would, Madam President.
Yes.
I had surgery 2 months ago that I was homebound, got back to work, and when this meeting came around, I got COVID. So 2 months in a row, I couldn't come. You didn't want me to come.
Yeah. Well, I think our rules are that it's supposed to be only the month before,
Yes,
but
I was
given
about
an
to say
illness,
that. Yes,
I
ma'am.
would say that I will move that both of those absences be excused because of illness.
Okay.
Is that possible, Ms.?
Well, the policy doesn't seem to give a, well, let's see what Amy says.
Is this in the council policy or the rules?
It's in a council policy. I haven't checked theirs. It may be echoed in their policy as well.
I don't
but-
think we can accept the council policy. If it was in our rules, I would say maybe we
Okay,
could accept
well
it.
then, let's do the most recent one, and then at least make a note. My motion would be to do the most recent and to check the council policy regarding the month before.
Okay.
Since he was ill both times. I don't know how you request an absence
How do
if
you
you're not
request
here
one?
because you're ill.
Right. Yeah, but it does say it's done at the next meeting, so in our council policy.
I
Yes,
understand.
ma'am.
Okay, so we'll do one.
Yes, ma'am. So for 220, that can be excused today, and then we'll look into to see if another one is allowable.
That's my motion. Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Kind of does not compute, but you're welcome. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none other, then Type B financial reports, please.
Good afternoon. Heather Hurlbert, Director of Finance for the city. So we're looking at the financial position for the Type B Corporation for the 4 months ending January 31st, 2023. Our beginning fund balance coming into 23 was $12.5 million. That is the unaudited balance. We are finishing up our audit, but we do not anticipate any type of significant changes to that balance. Revenues collected year to date from sales tax is $3.2 million. Expenditures year to date across the different programs are $397,000. And the ending fund balance January 31st is $15.3 million. Right below that, there is a little snapshot of the the affordable housing, economic development, and the streets of their individual revenues, expenditures, commitments, and their ending fund balance. So looking at expenditures overall, so the primary expenditures have been for the transfers to the general fund, which is for administration, the regional EDC contract, which comes out of our economic development, and then small and major business incentives that have been paid out within economic development. Then looking individually at our individual cash flows. So for affordable housing, we currently have almost $2.2 million that is committed. One is for the infill housing incentive program for $1 million, and the other is the Alma at Greenwood. We do have an update on the Alma at Greenwood. That one is, the developer has come back for another financing option, which was approved by council a couple of weeks ago. And so this commitment will remain until an update of status on that. So right now, the Housing Finance Corporation did support them going for the 6%, 4%, 6%, I can't remember which tax, 4%, the 4% tax program, tax credit. And so they will know later on, I think around August timeframe, whether or not they qualified for that. So then moving into our economic development, we do have several commitments that are out there, a total of about almost $7 million in commitments that are there. But we still do have a healthy fund balance available for commitments within our economic development funds.
Excuse me just one second. Please note that Board Member John Voss just arrived.
Okay. And then looking at our streets, we do have one project that is being funded out of the current year funds, totaling $4.1 million. That will be transferred over to the CIP, leaving a small balance that will be carried into the next fiscal year. So then looking at our sales tax revenue update, our collections. So year to date, we have collected $2.9, almost $3 million in sales tax revenue, which is about $83,000 more than what was budgeted. Again, a reminder that we do budget very conservatively on our revenue, and so being over budget on the revenue side is always a good thing. Our collections are very close to what our budgeted amounts are and are slightly ahead of what we were in fiscal year 22. So that does conclude my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Yes, Mr. Allen? Mr. Wilson, excuse me.
Heather, the soccer fields,
Yes.
do we have an update on that? Maybe y'all discussed it while I was gone.
We have not brought an update forward. I believe that Mike brings his update next month. We are meeting with the group, I believe, this week on Friday to talk about some of the challenges that they've experienced and get an update on that phase 2. My understanding, the last update I did receive is that the permits, they had been going through the permitting process. My understanding is that Development Services had approved what had been submitted. It was back over in the developers court, but they are continuing to move forward with it.
Because I saw a letter from Peter to the developers requesting that they show financing.
Exactly. That was part of the agreement, was that they had to show proof of financing for phase 2, not for phase 1, but for phase 2, and they had missed that deadline, but they have been granted an extension, and I believe that's part of what we'll be meeting with them on Friday about.
Thank you.
So it is continuing to move forward.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item, I think there's a presentation, and this is just to review our guidelines and current procedures. And I believe Ms. Alcott, and maybe, are you coming up, Mr. Culbertson? Yes, I am. Okay. Oh.
Good afternoon, Board. For the record, Amy Alcorn-Reed, Assistant City Attorney. This has been on the agenda for the past few months. Do we want to go through the presentation, Madam President?
Yes, because we've never done a presentation.
Okay. So some of this is history. Some of you who've been on this board since its inception will probably remember the history. Some of the people who are newer, it might be, more informative for them. So this is the actual ballot language that was approved in November of 2016 that created this Type B corporation. What it did was it moved a sales tax that had originally been in Type A over to Type B and created this corporation. The money can be used for the specific things listed in the ballot language, and specifically what we're talking about today is the 50% for economic development, which we wrote in here, promotion development of new and expanded business enterprises to the full extent allowed by Texas law. And that was different than our Type A sales tax, so that was important for us when we were making this change. These are the list of primary jobs according to the state, North American Industry Classification Systems. The state has certain allowances of Type B funding that go to primary jobs and other funding that does not necessarily require primary jobs. So when we talk about primary jobs, these are what we're talking about. It's mostly things that bring business in from outside of our area. Here's some examples of projects that are eligible that would create or retain primary jobs, and retain was also new. Our Type A sales tax required creation of new jobs. This one allows us to expend money to retain jobs as well. And we've done maybe a few of these, but really, I don't know that we've done anything that fits in these categories out of the Type B.
Yeah, go back. We've done, at least recently, we did.
The job training. We've done job training.
Yeah, and also, I think we've done the drone program.
Right,
Research and development facilities, I guess is what it was categorized under, something like that.
potentially.
Yeah.
And then here are some Type B only projects. So when I say Type B only, the Type A has more limited uses than the Type B. So when we moved over to the Type B, our options actually opened up quite a bit. And one of the ways they opened up was really for more public-related improvements versus just directly to businesses, such as streets and roads, sewage and solid waste disposal facilities, that sort of thing is more of typically a public improvement. Now, we did some of this under the Type A, I think we did maybe one street, but we had, we did the affordable housing under the Type A, but that was by ballot. And so we have exceptions when there's by ballot. The seawall as well. It was really a Type B project that we're doing in the Type A.
Go back. The drone, I guess. I mean, these are Type B that we have funded, is what I was pointing.
These are not I don't know that we haven't done a whole lot out of our Type B. We haven't had a whole lot of projects coming to us other than the university projects and a few like the sports fields. But we haven't done like a warehouse yet. We haven't done like a military facility. These are just options of things that we could fund.
Where does the engineering program at the university fall? Is it primary job training facilities or use?
Can you turn your mic on, please, Mr.
Yeah.
Voss?
Your mic.
I'm sorry. Where does the engineering program at the university fall?
So it is job training. Whether or not it's primary job training might depend. However, there are some that do not require primary jobs to be created, and that goes farther in here and does include job training as well.
Yeah, she's going to get to the, these are if we wanted to essentially give money directly to a company, I guess.
Some of them. There
Yeah,
are different
but
options.
We can also
Well-
spend monies beyond that.
Right. Can you go back again, please, to that?
Sorry, I'm just trying to read if engineering would fit
So the
into one of those
primary job
categories.
training facilities for use by institutions, so that has to go to has to have some type of university
University or
affiliation,
college.
right? Or
Correct.
college affiliation, right?
Correct.
Okay. Or national,
There's
regional or
another
national corporate.
job
okay.
training option as well, where you would give the money directly to the corporation. It just depends on what we're trying to do.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, so these are the ones we were just looking at. So these are examples of projects without the jobs requirement. That means that they don't require you to create or retain a primary job. So you can see there's some more job training classes there as an option. Career centers, although we're only allowed to do a career center, you're only allowed to do a career center if you don't have a community college. So we actually can't do career centers unless they're at Del Mar, because we do have a community college district.
So, and basically, right here is where we're harking back to what's allowed under the state law.
Correct. This is just
Yeah.
the state law.
This is the wide berth that the state law creates for Type B.
And then here's the type B only, again, without the job requirement, and this is where you have things like your entertainment, tourist and convention facilities, public parks, affordable housing, professional amateur sports fields, but again, that one has a caveat because they can't collect ticket revenue without an election, so that's a separate issue.
So when, Madam President,
Yes.
so when we helped to fund, I think it was $100,000 to the university's basketball program, that fell under amateur sports?
That was out of the arena fund?
Yes.
So that was
that was
specifically out of type A arena fund, which is eligible to fund anything that happens at the arena.
Right, but that money
Including a
didn't
sports
go to the,
facility.
did that money go to the arena
Yes.
or the university? I thought it went to the university for promotion.
No.
It's used for the, it's arena money. It's used for, I don't remember exactly what happened with that money.
It's part of the co-promotion that is allowable through the type A arena fund. So that's allowable use to be able to promote the arena.
Okay.
And so that's part of those. And so that was given to the university for promotion or for offset of cost, I believe. But that's from type A, specifically from that arena for the co-promotion piece.
Okay, because I remember when they pitched it to us, they were looking at that money to try and get more folks to sit in their seats for their basketball
The
games.
marketing.
Yeah, the
So the
attendance was
promotion.
low, so they were trying to did we ever get any feedback on that? How did that, because we were probably better off just giving them the $100,000. So how did we ever get any feedback on that?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Can we get feedback on that
Sure.
at some point? Because it was kind of a weird deal where we funded that in order to create awareness for the basketball program to get more people to attend the games.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were supposed to come back to us with any kind of an ROI or not, but
So that's part of it. So we do budget I think $650,000 a year for co-promotion. And so that not only goes to it had been to the basketball, but it also goes to the ice race. It goes to a lot of different events within the arena.
okay. But I thought that one was specifically for the basketball team because it was the athletic director who came and made that request. So I'd like to see what their attendance was before and after.
Okay.
I mean, they'd had a great year, so I hope it helped.
So, it is confusing to all of us even, because type A has a number of different buckets, mini buckets, and those are distinct from these type B
Right.
funds that we're talking about. It
Right.
has the marina, the seawall, fund, and there's lots going on over there. So maybe when we get to that next meeting, we can talk through
Okay.
some of these.
Chair,
Yes, sorry.
there's a presentation that I've given to community organizations. I think Constance might have that. But it breaks down A and B very well into how many cents are devoted.
Right.
And it's a very clear depiction of what goes into A and what's B and the breakdowns of each. I would suggest each of
Could you
y'all see
shoot that
that.
to Joe, and maybe he can shoot it out to all of us?
Yeah.
If you have it?
I think I think I still have it, but.
Or you do? Okay. Would be helpful. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay.
And then the big caveat on
You remember when we did that?
this slide
We gave them $100,000.
is affordable housing. Because of our ballot language, I don't think we can put any more money toward affordable housing than the 500,000 that's approved annually. And I have a different opinion about streets, so that's why I'm pointing that out.
Okay. So that's because they might be related to a specific development project?
Because affordable
economic.
housing specifically says not to exceed $500,000 a year, I think that's our limit. Whereas streets, to the extent that streets are being used for economic development in accordance with the state law, are not so limited. So 50% minus 500,000 has to go to streets, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't fund other street projects if they were related to primary jobs or some other economic development purpose. Because it doesn't have a cap.
Case-by-case basis, right?
Right, exactly. That's why I'm pointing it out, is just because I have a different opinion on the two issues. So we did adopt guidelines for economic development projects back in, I want to say 2018, yeah, there it is. We had a joint workshop between the Type B, the EDC, and the City Council, which led to the adoption of our current guidelines. Our current guidelines look a lot like the guidelines the Type A board had with the same economic development fund back when Type A had money for it. But it does have some like catch-all language, basically, to cover other projects. So it has like an other category in there, which is anything allowable under section 501 or 505, or chapter 501 or 505 of the local government code. Which means that we don't have a lot of information in our guidelines on how we would actually consider one of these community improvement projects, which is different than what the Type A could do. That's like an entertainment facility or a park-type project that might bring in new business. And they don't really lend themselves to the sort of economic modeling that Mike does. Mike can run, a type of facility, how many jobs that's likely to create, that sort of get an ROI for you. But when you talk about more of a community project, it's a little harder. It's kind of squishy on how to predict at the front end what it would do, even if you're convinced that it might have some benefit. So if we're opening our guidelines right now, it might be a time that we can talk about creating guidelines for exactly what it is we're looking for in these projects, because it may not be we want 50 jobs. It may be we want X benefit to the city that's likely to make people want to move here, so that then employers would want to come here. But we don't know what that is right now. So all we have right now is other, and if it's an other project that gets proposed to us, then all we can do is say, well, this is an other project that might qualify and bring it to you, but we don't know if it's one you'd like or not. I think Mike did this research, but we've looked into what other Type B cities do with their funding. It's kind of all over the place. There's not really hey, most Type Bs do this, most Type Bs do that.
Yeah, one I wanted to mention to you, I just ran across, is City of Brownsville has a totally separate Type B board. I'm just going to make note of that, and might be something for you to take a look at what they're doing down there, especially given SpaceX and some of that.
Yeah, Brownsville did a really interesting presentation at our last city attorneys conference on some of the things they're doing with it, and it's different, but it's interesting.
It is a bit broader, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then other considerations while we're talking about our guidelines are, things that have changed in our community and in the world since 2018. Specifically, does COVID and the challenges related to COVID open up our interest in moving in a different direction than we're currently moving in? So it's something to consider. And that's all of my slides, so we'll open up to the board for comments, I guess.
Mr. Wilson?
Amy, are our guidelines more restrictive than the state law?
Yes.
Can somebody educate me why?
Mike might have a better answer than mine, but my suggestion is that the state law is very, very broad. One reason to have guidelines is to say, this is what we want to focus on. And so that way we know as staff, and Mike knows as our EDC, this is what we're trying to bring in.
So there's no definite, you have to create 25 jobs or 10 jobs. It just says primary jobs. So, it could be 1, 2, if it says jobs. So we really wanted to, first off, it's easy because we have the NAIC codes, right? We're going to do this. But we can really go overboard. And also, we have guidelines on how much per job, and that's obviously not in the state statute. So I really think that you need this, and I need this, and I need this, so I can model for companies and say, hey, this is our guidelines. This is what you're looking at, so that they can make a better decision on is this enough or is this not enough. But if we don't have guidelines and I have to come to you every time, now you get to pick winners and losers, which is not a place you want to be, I don't necessarily think. And regardless, you can, with a majority, 75% vote, you can do a variance, right? So if it's something that you think is very important, but it doesn't quite fit into our guidelines, but it doesn't really go against state, you can certainly do it on a one-off. I really like the guidelines, and I really think that we ought to stick with them. If you want to play around the edges with them, you know, I'm all for that, and I will model that for you, but I really think we need the guidelines. Our biggest problem is, what about and other? So, you know, when I talked to, you know, and I called these people, I got to talk to Wes Pearson, you know, if you
Yeah.
remember him from back in the day.
Frisco.
He's Frisco's mayor. But, you know, he sent me to their
City
type B.
manager?
What's that?
Is he a mayor or city manager?
City manager.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody has a really good handle. One of the things that we would like to see, and that Brittany Sotelo in our office is looking at, is maybe an innovation fund. Now, these are not necessarily giving money for jobs and things like this, but we have two, for example. One is a place that gets water out of the air, which is pretty amazing. But not only that, it's great for South Gulf Park or something like that, where you can just put something out there and you can create water. You know, I mean, we're humid enough, God knows, and it's you know, they're just working through the parts of how to treat it, you know, because it has to be treated and somebody has to verify it. But they could use $50,000 to do the prototype to bring it through here. But, you know, would it create a job? Sure, it would create a job or two, but under our current guidelines, it's not very, it wouldn't be worth their time to go through all of this. So,
Well, let me clarify something, and maybe I'm confused, maybe it's just confusing, but
It's
first of all, let me
confusing.
note, we have section 10, which says, projects under this section can be any project allowed under Texas government code. So we gave ourselves an out.
right.
Right? We said, well, but, you know, if the right thing comes along. But it's confusing to me because we have these jobs when someone comes to us and they want X amount of money for their project. But it's clear we have also funded projects, and it is allowable to fund projects that don't directly produce that employment.
Right.
And so there are really two ways to go. If a business comes and says, we want a check, then these are the standards that we've used. But if other types of projects have been funded that don't have that direct primary job requirement, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
And that's our problem, or that's my problem.
right.
I'm struggling to give you guidelines. It's, I mean, some of them are just like, you saw the Sugarland one, you know, they get neighborhoods and you can put, you know, you can put Doyle Estates on a.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the same section where the Hutto Hippo came in, and I mean, Hutto Hippo is a thing that a lot of people in economic development talk about a lot, is a ridiculous, you know, project that was funded. They funded a hippo. That was approved by the Attorney General's office, as far as we can tell, as a fact issue. It wasn't determined to be a bad use of type B money, which means the type B money is expensive. And I say it that way because every time I hear that story, you hear it from someone who's like, well, how's that economic development? But the thing is, it could be. According to type B standards, it could be. If building that kind of community, I don't know, community like
Identity
closeness
or-
and
Quality of life,
quality of
whatever.
life, if that benefits the community by bringing in employers, then it could be economic development.
Yeah, the Attorney General actually said it went through all the proper steps and it's not up to the Attorney General to determine what economic development is. It's up to the board. So you have that going for you.
Ms. Summers has some,
I just was going to ask, under these other type B cities, do we have the other guidelines for Laredo or Frisco? Or, I mean, do we have something to look at?
They look suspiciously like our Section 10.
Okay.
They do have application guidelines, but that's it. They
So-
don't say what it has to be or what it doesn't have to be.
Okay. I do have some concern over, you know, kind of the neighborhood signage portion of this.
I do too.
You know, you go to other cities and yes, there, you know, the signage matches, but you would have to make sure you had HOA or POAs so that they could maintain it. We have very harsh environmental conditions here. Those can be very expensive to maintain. We don't want to fund something that is just going to go into disarray. So I do
I
have some.
personally have difficulty with that one, Ms. Summers, because I have difficulty explaining how an HOA sign
Okay.
would encourage anyone to move here.
Perfect. Yeah, I have the same concerns, so.
In the beginning, that was one of the specifics that I think we shied away from, was like the Sugar Land approach, which is, yeah. So, Mr. Valls.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I wish you would have told me that about a year ago, because my HOA just hit us up with a special assessment for a welcome to my neighborhood. No.
We
but-
would have said no.
But, yeah, but really, our guidelines, in my opinion, are just a roadmap for what our community and what our culture and what our political environment is interested in. Obviously, the state law governs, and as long as it doesn't go outside the boundaries of state law, it's a moving target. The other communities like Brownsville, Sugar Land, Laredo, it's what's good for their community. So every community is different. So what's good for Brownsville, Laredo, Sugar Land, or those communities that have the neighborhood signage may not be good for our community. So that's why, and Mike, you probably know better than anybody, our guidelines are a working document. We can change them at any time. And if there's something that needs to be plugged in that doesn't apply, like you said, we can grant a variance or a waiver to that, as long as it still falls under state law. And like you said, the AG has been very liberal in allowing a lot of these projects. It's really up to the local government and the local boards to determine what's right for their community and what identifies their community as economic. And it's not just economic development. Type B is very liberal. It's also community development. I mean, we're a port community. We're a industry community. We're a military community. Not every community has those assets like we do. So things that we may want to approve, like what was the project we did over at the base where we were going to improve the Admiral's home? Okay, or the facility at the Admiral. Right, but we had talked about it. That doesn't apply to certain communities that don't have military installations. So this is just a roadmap for us. You know, I think where it really comes down to is in our development agreements and the agreements that we do have with the companies and organizations that we do fund. And that's really where our teeth is going to be, and how to hold them accountable.
I do think the other
Thank you, Madam
reason
President.
You're welcome.
that we like having guidelines, and especially in Mike's position, is we've talked about how open this statute is and how open, the AG's office has been in interpreting it. One of the things included in our statute is a site improvement. And the Attorney General's office has defined a site improvement as basically anything that's affixed to the ground. And so that's very broad. And if we say, well, anything that's affixed to the ground that might create, future business enterprises is eligible, we could have a lot of people coming through the door. And so guidelines kind of help us guide people to, hey, this is the kind of project this board likes. This is the kind of project they want to
Exactly.
fund.
Yeah, I would say that guidelines, one second, is if you say, well, we're going to change the guidelines and allow this project, these are also adopted by the city council. So there's a secondary action that says then they have to approve the guideline change as well as the project. So the more we can, make those changes now, maybe the easier it is to process.
And that's true. Or if, in order to not have to change those guidelines and have to not go to council to change the guidelines, Mike can find
You turn your mic on.
somewhere in there where he can plug it in.
Section 10,
Yeah.
that's why we left it, yeah.
And I've worked in a lot of the small communities around.
John, I'm sorry, can you turn your mic on?
I'm sorry. I've worked in a lot of the small communities around the coastal bend, and their type B or organizations are completely different. I mean, they do a lot of things that we wouldn't necessarily do here, like a welcome sign at a city, entering a city. Doesn't work for us, but it may work for, some of these small communities. A basketball court at a city park, things like that. So it's different for every community, but I think we have the framework, and that gives Mike, the guidance that he needs and where to plug it in. And if it doesn't plug in, hey, you always got an out in this other area. So I don't know how we go about necessarily changing these and what needs to be changed, because I think it's pretty open-ended the way it is now.
Mr. Harris, you had some comments?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page as Mr. Valls. I think what we're trying to do is fence in or bracket these, what we can do with that 50% of the of the funds, and I think that may be a mistake. I think that we should, we shouldn't bracket it. We shouldn't try to fence it in, and it is our job, this board's job, to look at things. Now, Mike, it may make your job a little bit harder. You may have, 100 applications come in or something, but I've been here on this since Type B was conceived, helped put it together, and there hasn't been that much come our way, honestly. Now, if we were wanted to maybe say, how do we spend that 50%? Is the majority of it quality of life or quality of place, or is it the military or the port, or does it all have to be related to jobs? Maybe putting some percentages or something on that, but I still think that would be limiting us in a way when I feel really comfortable just listening to whatever comes our way and deciding what's the return on investment. Is it a community project, or is it just for like one business? I've really liked over the last 6 years that I've been doing this to just hear everything. Whatever comes our way, we just listen to, and we kind of just listen to how it's going to benefit the community, and then we make our decisions. Sometimes we've gone in that room, executive session. Most of the time it's been out here, but I wouldn't like for that to change at all. I think that we should try to keep this as open as possible. And like what John was saying, every community is different. We are appointed to this board because we know what's best for Corpus Christi. At least, yeah, we try. But yeah, so I'm on the opinion that we don't change too much.
Okay, and I think that's, I'm not sure these aren't, the one area that I thought we had changed, and I'll give you a specific, is, we talked about when we did some of these developer-oriented projects that we were inclined to make the money not a direct payment to the business, but for infrastructure to develop the site. And I don't think that got into the actual guidelines. So I know that's what we did with the apartments, I believe on North Beach, is we basically said, you tell us what your infrastructure bill is, and we'll fund some of that, and then when you finish creating the units and you've put in the infrastructure, then you get your money. So
On that
that's
one-
one thing I wanted to,
But Kent, that's a good point, and a good observation. But can't that be done in the development agreement itself?
it can.
Because
and it
that's
wa-
really where the teeth is.
It was, but at least it would give him a little bit of, this is what they may want to see. And I think that's,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
So
Yeah,
Mike
well, he
attends
brings,
all of
like-
our meetings. He's seen all the development agreements. He knows
Yes.
that we would like for the B funds to be focused on infrastructure. So when a particular developer will come to him and say, oh yeah, I want to do this project, and I want all my money up front, and it's not going to go to infrastructure, Mike will be like, well, the board does things a certain way. This is the way that it's been, and then it'll come to us and we'll confirm that.
Yeah, but
So-
that's also the philosophy of the board as well, because and Diane knows this better, every developer is different. Every development project is different. A developer may say, great, I'll take it in infrastructure. Another developer may say, I've got my infrastructure costs already covered through another investment category. I need it for this. So, I mean, I think as long as the framework is there to somehow get the funding to them with accountability, it's all going to be tied up into the development agreement. The agreement is going to say what they're going to get, how they're going to get it, what they're not going to get. I don't think the policy is wrong. I think the teeth are in the agreement.
So I'm kind of
I mean, I may be off base, but I think that the teeth are in the agreement.
I don't disagree. The question was whether we wanted to provide some additional guidance to Mr. Culbertson and the CCREDC.
I think
And I
it's a-
guess what you're saying is no, but listen.
I mean, like Scott said, I mean, I think I want to hear everything, and where Mike can plug it in within the guidelines, then it's up to the board, because, I mean, this board changes, and it's the
Exactly.
philosophy of the board. I mean, when we're all gone, the next board may say, we want it all in job creation only. So if you're not creating jobs, you're not getting anything. So it's the philosophy of the board, really.
I want to hear from Mr. Jimenez.
Well,
He's a new-
I got a couple items, but I guess while we're talking on this issue, I guess one of the questions I like to ask is Mike, I mean, you've worked on all this, several of these agreements before, like on these development agreements. What do you see, and I agree with the board and with John and Scott about, you can't get too specific in the language as far as the guidelines, because it might not apply to everything, but would some sort of like just washed down version or a general version of some guidelines that you like to see in within our guidelines to be able to carry into those development agreements, something that might apply to everything that you can utilize to reach these agreements, and as the board was saying, be able to say, well, this is what the board requires, and that way at least it's not, if a developer sees it, it's on paper, they know, okay, at least they require this 1, 2, 3 or ABC, and that way you can grab that and be able to move.
I would worry about fleshing out Section 10, to be honest with you. Take a look at botanical gardens. I mean, that's a thing, and it's actually, comes from city property. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good idea, things like that. So I would really, not only do I not have a good answer for Section 10, but I'm not sure, I think maybe the answer is just leave it the way it is. We at the EDC are working on an innovation fund, and we would like to see something like that within. It would have to be in Section 10, because it may or may not create a lot of jobs, or I can't point to jobs. Because remember, when you say you have 10 jobs, I come looking a year
For those
later.
10 jobs, yeah.
Gotta have 10
And you don't
jobs.
get your money.
Right. So, things like that. Yes, sir.
We do have several kind of overarching policies that we follow that aren't necessarily in these guidelines, but do end up in all of the agreements. One of those is that we don't pay up front. We wait till they have the CFO to pay. I don't think that's in the guidelines, but it's something that this board has always done. And I think we've been perfectly comfortable expressing that to developers
Okay,
throughout the process. So if there is something that the board does regularly in every development agreement, Mike's familiar with our agreements, I think he's comfortable explaining that. And I definitely am comfortable explaining that to people moving forward.
The other item, I like the concept of like going back to what Secretary Summers mentioned earlier. And I had the same, same concern. Is I like the something that I was looking here is kind of like beautification, like certain areas of the city or so, to make it more attractive. And those monument signs, when you go into neighborhoods or certain areas or areas of the city, they look nice, they're appealing, but what's the mechanism, or who manages or who maintains them afterwards? Because it could look nice for 3 to 5 years or so, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't look that good anymore. So while it's good concept, I think there needs to be some sort of guideline or a follow-up to where a certain city department or HOA or somebody takes over it. So I think it's a little bigger than what this
Yeah.
board is. I mean, we could
ready to go.
possibly fund it, but then how do you maintain it afterwards? I do like the innovation fund idea that you're working on. I mean, that's something nice, and I also agree with Scott on maybe not limiting the funds into certain pools, like the 50% or so, because you might have a good project coming, and you might be limited as to what's the utilization of the funds within those pools.
Mr. Voss?
Yep, thank you. Typically something like that, like a neighborhood sign, it's going to be agreement between the board, city, and the HOA who's requesting it. It's not going to be an individual just walking down the street saying, hey, I want a sign for my neighborhood. It's going to be an HOA. So there's going to be, there's going to be requirements in the agreement that they're going to have to maintain it and so forth. So I get that. But I just think that if we try to pigeonhole ourselves or fence it in, like Scott was saying, then project doesn't necessarily, like, the philosophy of the board is all infrastructure. Okay, somebody comes with a project that may not quite be infrastructure, and we know what's going to happen is that person's going to go to Mike at the EDC. The EDC is going to talk to each one of us, educate us on the item, and then that's where the philosophy changes to allow for that kind of project. Or even the city staff. I know city staff calls me on projects, hey, what are your feelings on this project? So fencing us in, I mean, I think we're okay where we're at. And it's whether it makes your job easier because now you know somewhere you can plug it in, or harder. And then it's just up for us to make those decisions. But I think we're okay unless we're really missing something here. But those are my 2 cents.
Let me mention one thing. The applications go to Mike and he reviews them. But then they go to the EDC board, and I'm just going to make note of that. And then depending on their action, it comes to us. Now, my understanding was we did request, and I assume this is happening, that if that board turned down an application, a formally submitted application, that we would be notified of what was being turned down. Not everybody that walks into your office and says, I got an idea, but any. I think we're still all on the same page on that one. Yeah.
And just a quick point of clarification, I don't think the recommendation was made that we use money for neighborhood signs. That was an example
Yeah.
of what another city had been, had used the type B funds for. So
Yeah.
I just want to make that clarification.
Yeah, let's not,
Where
yeah, I'm
that's
worried that we're
not a
getting
staff
ready to.
recommendation or a
Getting a
recommendation from Mike.
No, but I think, Madam President, what it does is it shows us the degree of latitude that this type of program can offer a community. And like I said, every community is different. I mean, the only way to kind of, what you're talking about when it goes to the EDC board is if we don't necessarily get everything, it's just bring it in-house, and then city staff is.
No, we
can,
get everything
you know.
that goes through the application process, either as approved or denied.
Right.
But again, it's not everybody that just
Oh, yeah.
wanders into Mike's office or a staff's office.
And for
Let
clarity,
me stop a second, because I wanted y'all to look at these guidelines, just so we thought about them and knew what they were. Again, it's always good. But really what I wanted people to talk about and maybe get some ideas about is, we've been kind of, in my view, we've been kind of waiting for people to bring us stuff. And it seems like that the number of these projects has been dwindling, whether it's COVID or whatever, for whatever reasons. We haven't had much, and we're building up a fairly significant amount of money. What is it that we could ask the staff and the CCREDC? What are the ideas, whether it's more in the level of small business, whether it's more promotional, whether it's more training? What are the kind of things that y'all think might leave a mark, if you will, with these funds and challenge them to, I mean, the Innovation Fund, which I just heard about, sounds like a great idea. What else is there out there?
So where would the biggest needs be?
Right, where could we be more creative about it rather than just awaiting?
I think one of the things that we haven't really explored in the past is, can't 10% be used for advertising for the program, or is
yes,
that something else?
promotion of the program. I think it's 10%. I'd have to verify, but I know there's a limit to how much we can use for promotion of our program.
Well, I know what. One thing is that I'm sure as board members, we probably get suggested a lot of projects. I know I do. So what do we do with those ideas and those suggestions? How do we get them
I
out
send them
there?
to Mike.
Okay,
That's what I do. Or Joe or Heather or Amy, or,
okay,
that's what I do.
Yeah.
okay.
But I mean, that's not the same as saying, you guys are all business people. What's out there in this community that we could build on to increase jobs or business or?
So I kind of know the answer to this question I'm getting ready to ask, but Mike, so the EDC's, say, strategic plan or focus, there's certain focus areas or major businesses that are in the Coastal Bend area, CCAD, Navy base.
You know, that's one of the things we
A&M
really haven't
Corpus,
done with, yeah.
Del Mar. We've seen all of those before,
Yeah.
but kind of rattle those off and, you know, the major contributors that could use something like this, that haven't historically used type B funds. What would those be?
We've actually had problems with the military about, you know, if we have an agreement and we get money, then somebody's on the hook, right, for clawback or whatever. So we've had difficulty there. We've had a couple of starts, but no ends. I would have thought instead of, you know, when we got the DAG to do the water line and things like that, I would think that that would probably have qualified. Now we got DAG, so please use that instead of this. That's one of the places I don't think we've been very successful in finding.
And you may
a
want to
project.
tell them what DAG is, because I
Oh,
know
it's,
Alan and Leah know, but
Yeah, actually, I know, defense, you know what it?
I make adjustment, something. It's state money.
another grant.
Yeah,
It's state money.
State grants to help bases within communities. So NAS needed, would like to have another water line, a redundant water line, and it wasn't until we got the DAG grant for that. And CCAD, for all of its OPSEC, operational security, did not have a fence around it. You know, it had the fence around the base, but not around the buildings themselves. And so that was another DAG grant that was done.
Yeah. So what about small business? I mean, I think y'all have been struggling more with small and medium businesses. What has the
You know, it's
CCREDC been
really-
talking about on that?
You know, we push down through our investors, and also we use the SBDC quite a bit, and they are a source of people who come to us. Really, not a lot after that. I mean, when you're dealing in billions of dollars in projects, we really struggle sometimes when we talk to small business, because we're not built for small business. We're not experts in it. We're not that. But we certainly handle applications all the time. And maybe that's another point with the marketing that we could do.
Should we be reaching out more to the chamber, the DMD, places where there are, you know?
I think they're almost everybody that we get mention one of those three, either SBDC, the chamber, or DMD, as a source of, hey, these people told us about, you know, that you may have funds.
I was going to say, one of the things to remember too is that the city now has their own economic development department too, that we've been trying to focus more on small business and those needs too.
But, you know, with all due respect, I know y'all been working on this, and it's been an uphill claw, but what are those programs then that y'all see that we could help with? Have y'all gotten a plan laid out?
No, we're still working with council on that, but that is something that we do, we will need, as we progress through that process, be identifying those areas where assistance could be used.
Let me give you
those
one
needs.
example of things I hear. One thing I hear is a lot of challenges for a small business person when it comes to permitting, development services, certificate of occupancy. Not, you know, they just don't understand. They don't know that, you know, is there something in there that we could help with?
I mean, can we?
Be that an ombudsman, be that a program, be that, yeah.
Or a liaison?
Or, yeah, an ombudsman.
You're right, because I've heard of several small businesses that they have a hard time getting through development services. Just getting an inspector to come out and inspect electrical so that they can get their certificate of occupancy. And the way that you get it done, the way they get it done is they'll call their councilman, and their councilman will make a call and try to expedite it, but that's just the reality of it. But that's a great question. What can our role, if any, be in trying to help that department move things along?
See that as being an allowable expense?
Like a person to help with the permitting?
It could be information, it could be paying to get a better, you know, education program
I
where,
think it's something we can definitely look into to see what, you know, we can look at that and bring some ideas back on how that could be accomplished within the statute. And I know that's one of the things that currently within the economic development staff that we do, Jason Elanese, as a matter of fact, spends a lot of time with those that reach out, but the problem is a lot of people don't know to reach out. And so we kind of get it on the back end. But I think it's definitely something that we can look at and see what that would look like, and bring an understanding back to the board on how that would be funded through the Type B funds.
We're not talking big money here when
No,
we've got
no,
all
no,
this in the
no.
bank, but I mean, that's one of the inhibitors. The other one I've heard about is the promotional aspect, not,
Mm-hmm.
as a small business, not having enough money to really promote. I got a new business, some sort of co-op promotional.
Promoting is much harder because really we can only expend the funds to promote either the Type B itself or a Type B project. So it's harder to
We can't
promote
do
other-
business marketing, I believe we can.
It's a lot harder. A lot of the limit is, we had a proposed project on this a while ago. I'll have to go look at.
No,
look
no,
at
no,
that.
what I'm saying is you could do a promotion of a general promotion that, for an area of town spotlighting small business.
I'd have to look at that, but I've never seen a way to do
Well, if
that.
you can do a sign, I mean, come on.
But it's attached to the ground.
It's affixed to the ground, yeah.
JJ, do you have something?
Yeah, just a couple things again, I guess that's a great idea about the development services to help and stuff like that, because it is, I see it as, there is an issue there. Me, myself, I'm in the middle, almost finishing building a house for myself and my family. And it took me about 6 months to get a building permit for a house. I've had clients that we've done plans before, and it takes, same deal, 6-8 months to get a permit for a business. And sometimes that deters, that development or those potential companies coming into town because, they'll rather go, out to Kingsville or to Portland or somewhere else because but I think it's a departmental issue there. They don't have enough staff and they don't have enough people to go through. So I think even if we were to fund or get somebody to help in, I think the help needs to come from within. But
Well, especially when it comes to business.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you're a
definitely, 'cause it-
sophisticated user.
yeah,
by the way.
because it is a roadblock for development and it can be
Mr.
frustrating.
Voss? Oh, no, oh, okay.
Well,
No, you
I
were
was just
first.
going to chime in on the development services. I mean, I know they've been trying to add staff there. I think we have to be careful that they're not having to add staff to raise fees on to everyone, because then it becomes more expensive to try and open a new business or build a new house. I know the fee conversation is a big conversation within there. So if it's something that this board could support, maybe that works.
I
But
think it has to be business oriented,
Yeah.
sorry, single family,
Yeah.
right, but maybe that would help take some of the pressure off of the single family side if there was a business side.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
guess
like-
what I'm thinking is just somebody that could explain what the process is going to be. It just seems like that you walk in and here you are, I want to open a restaurant, and next thing I know, it's fire codes and, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I just don't even know what the vocabulary is.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's, we've gotten that feedback from small businesses, and it can be overwhelming to understand how to work through that, and know that Jason has worked with some businesses very successfully of just more of being that guide, not necessarily, getting into the technical prospect of it, but hey, this is the first step, and then what you're gonna need here is this, and what you're gonna need here is this, and helping be that a true liaison between that small business and development services and the permitting side to help speak in that, that English that
This is kinda
is,
open,
it's a different English, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. And also, like you just mentioned, like, and also maybe another liaison or so on the. We were just talking about like small business and stuff like that. I don't think there's enough outreach or enough information out there for small businesses to know like what we're really here for, what we can provide and how we can help them. We have a really good scenario coming into the area with this large, huge companies moving in, and they don't need incentives. They don't need, but they are gonna need staff that's trained to work on their projects. So for example, one like Tesla, and then we have, several hydrogen companies looking in the area. It's like Delmar is, in Corpus Christi, are they geared to have those programs, to be able to, provide for this company? So, and at the same time, there's small businesses that could be created to provide services to these companies. So it's kind of like that outreach, and how do we get out there and tell these companies, hey, this is what's coming. Get ready, get your staff
Here are
ready.
the kind of businesses they might need,
Yeah.
is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah,
Yep.
the ancillary indirect
Yep.
opportunities.
Yeah, and I don't see that. I think that's a gap there. I know we are doing we're one of the engineering providers for Tesla, and one of the things that I see is the same. Like they're kind of not lost, but they don't, even themselves don't know what the area can provide for them. They don't know. We know what A&M Kingsville can do, A&M Corpus can do, and having some sort of liaison that can just focus on those type of aspects and be able to coordinate. Okay, well, you're gonna need this. Okay, let me reach out to
Sure.
go to PTAC, find out what business does what, and
Exactly.
connect them. Somebody to connect all the dots. That's what we're lacking in the
Yeah.
area, I think, and it'd be beneficial to create a bunch of jobs, because we're about to be like
Well, not
flooded with
Delmar does a
development.
really good job of that, of trying to
Yeah.
let those know, the ones, and I think what your
But
point
there's
is
more than
that,
Del Mar, is what he's saying,
Yeah.
Heather. I mean, they're great, but that's one,
Yeah.
that's one slide.
Yeah, all
Just
those
like-
businesses are going to require a certain, level that Delmar can provide, and then they're going to require others like A&M Corpus, A&M Kingsville, or even further out can provide. So it's somebody kind of put the whole picture together. I'd see it.
And
I'll
that-
tell you
that-
what worries me. The elephant in the room is Mike knows a lot of this,
Oh, yeah.
but he's got a short shelf life.
No,
And so,
Well,
how does his knowledge get transferred to
No,
the
we're
next?
trying to fill my
for-
position so we can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the holes is what that you've been talking about, Diana, and that's, the craft training center or apprenticeship and things like that, which, because they're not with Del Mar or with A&M, they're, it's difficult. Even though Del Mar is doing a carpentry or framing class that, lasts like 8 weeks, but, here's a hammer, and things like that. Look at what you're going to hit what you look at. So that is one of the problems. That's one of the things that I think we could probably do better, but I don't know how because of that. There are other training opportunities.
Thank you. Going back to development services, I hate to keep beating that dead horse, but that is where a lot of the challenges are. I mean, I've had several people contact me to try to help them get through, and unfortunately, what I see is that those folks over there, and they're all good, hardworking folks, they have to understand that on the other side of that counter, time is money. Every day that store is not open, they're losing money. So waiting for an inspector to come, waiting to get that certificate of occupancy, I mean, Jesus, it's frustrating for a lot of folks trying to get their businesses up and running. And they're pretty hard too on some people trying to open a little shop. So we need to somehow get that mindset that they need to think more like entrepreneurs over there and realize that every delay costs money. Every day costs money. And unfortunately, it doesn't make people want to necessarily come here when they have to face, or expand when they have to face that.
I think the vocabulary differences are pretty important.
Yeah, and we need more bilingual people over there too.
No,
though.
I just
Oh,
meant, yeah, no.
I know what you meant.
You know,
I know what
I
you
mean,
meant. I know what you meant.
Well, you need this. I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah.
True. Where do I
mean,
start?
One other thing is like the internship programs. I think that they're, I still don't see as much promotion on those as I wish I saw. And I'll just say that. And the other thing is, I think there's some informal policies or procedures, let me put it that way. For example, in here we talk about the internship program, but then we did expand that to include not-for-profits, right? But it doesn't say that in here.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's a change or not a change, but we did say, okay, it can be profit or not for profit, but I think maybe there's some, within that, there are some ways that that may be administered, and that's one area. There may be some other ways that these things that we have approved are being administered that we don't know how that's happening. And so I would just make sure that if that's occurring, we see the contracts with Del Mar, we see the contracts, but if there's administrative parts of that that we need to be made aware of about what y'all are thinking as staff or the CCREDC, it would be good to bring those forward to us, just so we know what they are. Anything else? Any other innovative ideas? I know you,
So-
Scott, you went to some TML meetings and talked about some things you had learned there. Are there things that you can think of?
Nothing specific, no. But I was, I guess what I was gonna suggest here in the
Yeah, we need
spirit
to
of
go.
time, maybe Chair, you grab one of us, another board member, kind of put what we discussed here in writing and maybe come back with a revision to our guidelines that our board can look at, or maybe work with Mike on what that looks like. I don't know
I'm
what the
not
next
hearing any
steps are here.
revisions of guidelines. What I'm hearing is direction. Y'all
I
seem
didn't know what
happy.
you
No.
expected out of this
No,
meeting.
no, I really wanted to get to what we talked about here, which is
Okay.
where are the opportunities for the future.
Okay.
We need to look at training, like JJ said, Tesla's coming, and one of the things that, they've talked to us about is where they're gonna source all of their labor. And we've steered them towards the Craft Training Center, A&M Kingsville for engineering interns, A&M Corpus, Del Mar. But we don't know exactly what they're looking for just yet, and Mike may, but where do they go, Mike? I mean, really, there's not like a one-stop shop for them to go where all of these organizations I just
Workforce
mentioned.
Solutions has a real good handle on those.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I'm not sure, but,
Yeah, 'cause
and then there's several hydrogen companies that we're talking to out in the Robstown area, and I know you are too, and I mean, where are they gonna go get their labor from? I don't want that to be, water is the big impediment. Do we have enough water? I don't want labor to be that problem either. So I think, like you said earlier, labor, wherever it comes from, but maybe it's a coordinated effort with a clearinghouse, so to speak, of all of those groups. I don't know, but we need to make sure they have somewhere to go. Because if they have to go everywhere, it's gonna be a lot of work for them.
Send them to Workforce Solution.
Well, Brittany in our office is trying to get together Workforce, Del Mar, Craft, C2E, the one that
The one that's
came
in the high
for,
schools,
what's that?
the one that's dealing with high school
Yeah.
students.
The career,
Yeah.
And we're convinced that, if we don't start reaching down into the high schools, if not the middle schools, then we're going to lose those students to somewhere else. So, but yeah, we're looking at that.
So do y'all have some idea, y'all understand that maybe we're willing to entertain some out-of-the-box ideas is what? Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll continue, we'll go through what we heard today and talk amongst us and sit down and bring some brainstorming.
Brainstorm, yeah. And then
Bring some
Amy can
ideas.
tell us what's not legal.
Exactly, yeah, we'll make sure we'll star the things that are legal, highlight the things that aren't. So, yeah, we'll make sure we bring that forward.
Okay, is there any report by the city manager, or in this case, the assistant city manager?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay,
Where is Peter? How come he's not here?
busy.
He was meeting with the mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for putting this all together. I appreciate it. And any other business? If not, I'll call the meeting adjourned.